Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again for another Marvel Cinematic Saturday. Today I watched the first Iron Man movie, and obviously still a great movie. It actually does hold up pretty well. Um, there's it kicks off really well. The intro is great. There's you get a few fun little jokes there, and then right into some action. Um, and Then the explanation of how he got there um, shows, showing what kind of person Tony Stark is at the start of the movie, or before the movie, I guess. Um, he actually does a really good job handling the pop up interview that ends up happening. And that also shows how smooth he is by getting that interviewer into bed, because he's Tony Stark. Um, Sexing up the ladies is what he does. Um, his And then Pepper making that sometimes I take out the trash comment to the interview lady. Mean, but it's a good line, and really good comeback to the interview lady's own cattiness about Pepper picking up laundry, picking up dry cleaning. Stark's speech about the Jericho is really cool. Apparently improvised. Robert Downey Jr. just improvised that speech, which is pretty impressive because it is a damn good speech. Um, Downey gets a couple moments to show off his guns, show off those pipes when he's working at the anvil, hammering his mask. Um, he was in good shape for that for this movie. Yeah, he didn't bother with the six pack or anything. Didn't need to, but he had some good arms. Uh, I do love the first suit. There's a great weight to that suit. It feels heavy, and the sounds it makes are really cool. Those mechanical sounds um, really give it. Yeah, like I said, they really give a weight to the whole thing. Um, will say when Rhodey finally reunites with Stark and says, "How was the fun V?" That felt inappropriate. I mean, a whole bunch of soldiers died. Everyone in the fun V died. Come on, Rhodey, have a little sensitivity to your fellow dead soldiers. Come on. Uh, Nice little bit of Burger King product placement at the press conference, I noticed. Um, and Coulson, first appearance of Phil Coulson, uh, who's great in this movie. He's just uh, so cool. Like, he just seems like it's like this really normal guy, but also you know kind of a badass. So yeah, I really like Coulson. He gets a really good intro in this movie. We see him again in a couple others, of course, and then he gets Agents of Shield, which made him a bit more of a badass than he really needed than he ever felt he needed to be. He was always best as this fairly bureaucratic looking dude. But yeah, Coulson, he's great. Um, did notice that at one point that Stain has one of those what were they called? Like those hoverboards with like the handle on them. Those things that kept breaking down and were just sort of a laughing stock when they were big. I don't even remember what they were called. Um, just riding, joyriding on one of those, and that made me laugh because it's like, wow, that is so 2008. Um, Mad Money Jim, whatever his name was, Jim Cramer. He was always a douchebag, and he comes across as even more of a douchebag in the movie. Honestly, um, you know, all the sound effects and the yelling, and it's just, dude, you're you're giving financial advice. Why are you like that? Uh, find it interesting that Pepper apparently never played Operation when she was a kid, which is weird. Uh, the sequence of, I think the highlight of the movie is all the stuff with Tony building and testing the armor. There's some good jokes in there, and there's also some really cool, like, fake technology stuff going on. And his first flight is just amazing. Um, also gets to highlight Jarvis' sarcastic wit, which is always fun. But yeah, that whole thing is just so good, so cool, so fun. Um, really shows the joy of being a superhero, you know? The joyous side of it. Uh, Obviously, there was the great Stan Lee reference as Hef. Um, and at the that party, Downey and Paltrow have some really good chemistry. Those two are really good together. Honestly, I love Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. It's a shame that Gwyneth Paltrow's um, kind of garbage in real life. Uh, she's, just not smart, and the whole goop thing and selling like shitty product, and it's a shame about Gwyneth Paltrow's real personality because she's so good as Pepper. She's just got the right amount of uh, she's got some good charm to her, and I think what's important is that she is able to really play off Downey well. Downey has, as Stark, has sort of an overbearing personality, and Paltrow as Pepper just sort of lets him go with that, and then just gets uh, back on track. So I think she does a really good job. I think uh, they balance each other out really well. Um, Also, I laughed at her asking for an olive with lots of olives, like at least 3 olives. It's just such a weird uh, comment in a superhero movie, and I just love that. And it's so human. Like, it's such a real thing. Um, there's the suit assembly bit when he's about to go off to fight terrorists is really cool. Um, there's his cool almost superhero landing. He doesn't quite do the superhero landing. He doesn't put his fist down, but he lands, like on one knee. Um, I like Dummy getting to be a hero. Of course, there's Downey's just I am Iron Man. Yeah, that's like such a big, great ending to the movie. Such a big, great moment. Um, in the comics, he kept up his secret identity for over 30 years. Um, MCU, he just kicks right into not bothering with the secret identity. And the post-credit scene with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury and Avenger Initiative. That's like, as I remember when I went to the theater and when I first saw Iron Man in the theater, and that scene was like, oh sweet, Samuel L. Fury, yes, and Avenger Initiative. That wow, like that was such a big moment at the time. It really was like one of the biggest moments in any comic book movie, really. It was so huge because it was just them declaring, "Oh yeah, we're making this like a full universe," and yeah, that really was a huge deal and the right way, I think, to introduce a cinematic universe. Few other, there's been a few other attempts to create cinematic universes, usually by just like, but it's usually kind of phoned in. A lot of time, it'll be something like, uh, just littering the movie with characters who are clearly intended to be spun off to create more. And I like that Marvel went about it naturally by just starting off with, this is Iron Man. And, this movie is about him. This movie isn't about setting up anything larger that's going to be going on. But, here's one scene for those who stay after the credits that is confirming that there is going to be something bigger going on. So I think that was the right way to do it. As always, it's interesting seeing the ways that it differed from the comic books. Comic book Tony, it's funny, like, this was a very different take on Tony Stark. Well, no, it was the ultimate comic. It was the ultimate universe take on Tony Stark. Not quite as terrible, but it was definitely drawing more heavily from the Ultimate Universe than the regular universe Tony Stark. Because regular universe Tony Stark, up until the this movie, he was, kind of just a boring guy, in a sense. He didn't have the same sarcastic wit that Downey brings to it. He had more just like the generic superhero humor. And, right from the beginning, he was more unequivocally heroic. Another interesting thing was, and then his romance with Pepper. So, that was an interesting thing. So, in the comics, again, Pepper Potts did debut as his personal assistant. When she debuted, she was clearly meant to be plain looking, and I think it was Ditka who drew her, and yeah, she did actually look pretty plain, honestly. Very cute. Lots of freckles on her face, and she was very cute, but she didn't look like a supermodel, which is obviously what the kind of women that Tony Stark dated. So very early on, she got a makeover that did make her look more gorgeous, and then Tony Stark got interested in her. But this was the 60s, so there was just lots of will they, won't they stuff going on. And also there was Happy Hogan in the mix, who was drawn to look straight up ugly. Like he was a boxer. Like he was a former pro boxer, and he looked it. He had sort of a lumpy face, and didn't smile, and his eyes were sort of squinty. He was not a good looking guy. The Happy nickname was obviously meant to be ironic because he didn't look very happy. And he kept hitting on Pepper, who kept rejecting him very rudely. And so there was a bit of so there was a little bit of a romantic triangle there. But Pepper actually ended up with Happy. She didn't really have anything with Tony. Like, she made herself up in order to be appealing to Tony, but she and Tony never really had any romantic relationship. They were interested in each other, but they didn't quite get together. And then she instead got with Happy, who started to be drawn to look a lot more attractive. I think Rock Hudson was sort of ended up becoming sort of the model for Happy. Kind of a shame that he ended up looking more handsome. But yeah, they ended up together for a long, long time until Happy died. I don't know, a little over 10 years ago or something like that. I think I want to say. I don't really remember exactly when Happy died. And Pepper and Tony have hooked up once or twice, but definitely not in the sense that the movies made it out as them, being in a genuine romantic relationship. So it's interesting that the movies went there right away. Not really surprising though. She wasn't really she wasn't really Tony Stark's main love interest in the comics, but she was always there. He's had a few love interests in the comics. Actually, he's had a ton of love interests. Take too long to list them. He almost hooked up with Cleopatra once. That was a thing. So yeah, anyway, Iron Man and Pepper and Happy, they were created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Now this is one instance where I am actually more inclined to trust Stan Lee's story of how it came about. Because what he said is that he wanted to do make a superhero that was rich and weapons manufacturer, and see if he could make people root for that character. So he made, because this was the 60s obviously, so hippies not big into rich people who are making weapons. So he wanted to see if he could make someone that those people would cheer for. And, he succeeded. Iron Man's always been a fairly popular character. He's pretty much always had his, more or less always had his own solo series going on. Not always great, but always there. And his best storyline, I guess I should say his first great storyline, would have been Demon in the Bottle in the 80s, when he was, a story that confirmed him as an alcoholic. And that's been a hugely important part of his character ever since. He is an alcoholic. He doesn't drink. Every once in a while, you'll get a story where he does drink, and it's always treated as a very serious thing. Side note: Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, also an alcoholic. Tony Stark was actually her sponsor when she joined Alcoholics Anonymous. So that was fun. Just a fun fact there. Those early comics with the Ditko art, they were good. They were pretty standard 60s superhero comics. There was a lot of Cold War stuff going on. It's the debut of is where Black Widow was first introduced, also where Hawkeye was first introduced. Obviously, they'd go on to become pretty important characters. He fought a fair number of armor-based characters. Also, just other random like monsters and aliens and stuff like that because it was the 60s. So, yeah, it was 60s comics. They were fine. Obadiah Stane in the comics was actually a competitor of Tony Stark. And at one point actually ended up doing a hostile takeover of Stark Industries. As I recall, I'm trying to remember if that was when Tony Stark... I think that was when Tony Stark sank into serious alcoholism and ended up homeless for a time. I think that Stane was the one who did that to him. Stane ended up dying, and his his company sort of fell apart for a while. His son later became another villain of Tony Stark. Never really reached the same level of notoriety that Obadiah did, just on account of how thoroughly Obadiah ruined Tony Stark's life. Who else was in the movie? Coulson didn't exist in the comics until just a few years ago. I think it was shortly after the first Avengers movie that he ended up being introduced into the comics. Along with Nick Fury Jr., who was very clearly meant to be Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, the Black Nick Fury. That story was handled so badly. It was such a terrible story. Nick Fury in the comics, of course, goes back. He also debuted in the 60s. Kirby and Lee, I believe, in War Comic. Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. Set in World War II, Nick Fury leading a team of commandos on missions into Nazi Germany. It was a war comic. It was a Marvel comic, so it was very, they played down the horrors. It was kind of a bloodless comic. Occasional deaths, but not too many. And never shown graphically or anything like that. Wasn't really my comic that I was big on, but whatever. And then Nick Fury, of course, is more famous as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and has been... That's where most of his appearances were as director. He's had a few, he had a few minis where he was focused on it, and team-ups with other characters, cameos in other comic books, things like that. Nick Fury... Yeah, he was a cool character. Nick Fury's a cool character. Who else was in this movie that is worth talking about? Rhodey. He was introduced, I think, in the 70s. I forget who introduced who introduced Rhodey. But yeah, I mean, he was just Tony Stark's Air Force friend. Um, Not a whole lot more to it than that. He did end up filling in for Tony Stark as Iron Man for a good few years, actually. And then once Tony Stark went back to being Iron Man, he made Rhodey his own suit, so Rhodey became War Machine, which is what he's more famous for, and continues to be. And Rhodey's great. Kind of a shame they replaced Terrence Howard in the second movie. He was pretty good. He was pretty good in the first one. On the other hand, it's always hard to be disappointed in. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the actor's name. Whatever. And what else is there worth to talk about? His current Iron Man's current solo series is doing pretty well. It seems to be pretty good. Um, he's now dating Hellcat, Patsy Walker. If you've ever seen Jessica Jones' show, Patsy Walker, she is very much not like she is in the Jessica Jones TV show. They took a lot of liberties with her in that show. So they're now a couple, and he's fighting Big Bad from like 70s Guardians of the Galaxy comics and some 80s Avengers comics. A guy named Korvac is the current villain of that series. Obviously, I'm behind it because I'm reading it on Marvel Unlimited, so I'm a few months behind, about 6 months behind, to be specific. But what I've read is pretty good. And Pepper's not really appearing anywhere right now. Rhodey, I don't think, is actually appearing anywhere right now either. I think he's sort of just sort of in comic book limbo at the moment. Oh no, he's an Iron Man. No, duh, I'm silly. He's appearing in the Iron Man series as well, um, which is where he usually is. So yeah. Anyway, don't think I've got anything else to mention regarding the movie or the comics that it's adapted from. Um, Actually, one thing I will note about the comics: the '60s comics, the '60s Iron Man comics, were super obsessed with transistors. You know, transistors were how his suit worked, and they were just magic. They were absolute magic. They could do anything. Um, anyway, yeah. So that is all I've got. So thank you for watching, and I will be doing a live tomorrow. So have a nice night.